Last summer, my fiancé and I traveled to Romania during the summer. We were on a budget, therefore we couldn't really afford staying in an expensive hotel, so we checked our options, but because we were not that quick with the reservations, and it was one of the most expensive seasons of the year, we couldn't find anything that would match our budget. I talked to a friend who had visited Romania before, and she had recommended me to look at an Airbnb. Now, I've heard of Airbnbs before, but I've never actually used any. I clicked on the link my friend sent me, but there was a problem. The flat where she stayed was already booked, and I kept looking at some other options until I realized I could search for the cheapest price. Well, I was very lucky because I found a lovely looking apartment at a very good price. I was almost hesitant at first, and I thought there was some type of mistake. A beautiful vintage-looking bungalow for €15 a night? That was a very sweet deal, and I messaged the owner and they confirmed that the price was in fact correct. And so my fiancé and I did not hesitate and immediately booked the place. Now, before going to Romania, we had been in Hungary for 4 days. Our plan was to also spend the same amount of days in Romania. And so we got to this place in Romania on a Thursday evening. It was already late, and we were tired because we had been on the road, so we immediately went to the house that we had rented. We got there about, 9 p.m., and we had a difficult time finding it because it was in a rural area. Google Maps wasn't really cooperating that much. The road was also very dark, so it made it difficult for us to notice anything. But when we finally located the house, we parked at the front, we got our stuff out, and contemplated the beautiful bungalow for a couple of minutes before someone opened the door. "Oh, you must be Ava and Michael," said this woman with a very strong Romanian accent. "Oh yeah, nice to meet you," we kindly answered. But the woman didn't seem too interested in engaging into conversation with us. She seemed in a rush. She even grabbed our luggage without even asking us first and put it inside. And Michael and I looked at each other and tried not to laugh. It was obvious both of us thought that the woman was a bit strange, but it's not the weirdest thing that had happened to us in one of our trips. Well, at least not yet. The house was as beautiful on the inside as it was on the outside, and the lady gave us a quick tour around it. Despite only having one floor, it was very big and had plenty of rooms. This lady also showed us our room that happened to be the first room in the hallway, and our room was very nicely organized and it had a lot of space. Aside from our room, there were 5 other rooms in the house, one of them that was a library, and 2 others that were guest rooms. And this lady had a room, and another one that the lady said was a private room, and that we couldn't use either of them. We didn't really question anything, and we listened to her. Initially, we thought we had the whole place for ourselves, but then it became obvious that the lady wasn't going to leave. We didn't care much because even if she was a bit weird, she was also nice. For example, she gave us food and told us about some places in the area to visit. We were also very tired that day, and we decided to go to sleep early. One of the good things about our room was that it had a bathroom, which meant once in the room, we really didn't have to leave it. Now, Michael and I fell asleep almost immediately, but I was woken up at midnight by some random noises. They were not extremely loud, but loud enough to wake me up. The noises were very weird, but this was a very old house, so I decided to ignore them and go back to sleep. We woke up the next morning, and the lady had prepared us breakfast. We felt honored and sat down to eat with her, and she asked us how we slept. I took the time to ask Michael and the lady whether they had heard something last night, and Michael immediately said no. The lady, however, seemed a bit uncomfortable. No noises around here at night. It must have been you dreaming. This place is very quiet. As you could tell, there's not many people around. she said. And since the noises were not a big deal, I didn't really say too much more about it. As Michael and I were going out after breakfast, we noticed she was about to go out as well, and she was wearing a nurse's uniform. "Oh, I didn't know you were a nurse," I asked her. "Yes, but no worries. I should be here before the two of you tonight," she said as she was leaving. We have indeed previously told her that we would be coming home late at night, so it was not weird, she knew, but we did get the impression that she didn't like people being alone in the house. But, I get her. After all, strangers in your house, especially as a single woman, can be a bit scary. Michael and I eventually got home late, as expected. We didn't see the lady around, but since it was late, I assumed she was already sleeping, and Michael fell asleep quickly. For me, however, it was taking some time. That night, I had a strange sensation. I felt some sort of pressure. I felt something on the air. Something on my chest. I didn't know exactly what it was, but something was making me feel very uneasy. After a long time of laying in bed, trying to sleep, I started hearing that noise again, as if somebody was punching a wall. This time I was certain it was not a dream. It was obvious that the lady who owned the house knew about these sounds, since in the morning she seemed so stressed when I pointed them out. Also, these noises seemed to come from the area where her room was. There was no way she didn't know about them. I couldn't just relax. I wanted to know what was going on, so I got up from bed, opened the door, and decided to check where the noise was coming from. The hallway was dark as most of the rooms were closed and the lights were off. However, as I kept walking through the house, something strange happened. The door of the last room in the hallway opened. The room the lady had told me not to go into. There seemed to be a light coming from that room, and so I walked to it. I passed all the rooms, but the sound had suddenly stopped, so I didn't manage to notice where it came from. As I was literally standing in front of the open room, I decided to go back to mine. After all, the lady had told me not to go in there, and I didn't want to disrespect the owner of the property. However, as soon as I turned my back to go to my room, I heard someone in the room calling my name. "Hello? Is that you?" I asked, thinking it was the lady, but had no answer. "Eva, come here," the voice said. For a few seconds, I didn't know what to do. The voice did sound similar to the landlord's voice, so I decided to risk it and enter the room. I entered the room and looked around, but I didn't see anybody or anything in particular. There were only 3 things in the room: an old-looking lamp, a vase with flowers, and a painting of a woman hanging on the wall. The painting was very big and beautiful, and I took a step closer to give it a better look, but exactly the same time, I had felt someone touching my shoulder. I wasn't expecting it, so I jumped at first. I then turned my head to see the landlord. She seemed very upset with me. "I told you not to come to this room. Get out," she said as she grabbed my arm and helped me to get out of the room. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I kept hearing noises, so I woke up to see what was going on. I didn't mean to enter the room, but you were calling me. Well, I thought you were in here," I said, trying to excuse myself. She seemed confused at first, but after a couple of minutes, she said she was calling me, but that she was in the kitchen, which was very odd because I heard the noise coming from the room, not from the kitchen. I couldn't help but ask her about the painting, and she simply said it was a very important piece of art, and that's why she doesn't let anybody in the room. I then asked her why she called me, and she just stood there quietly and told me that she had forgotten why. The next day I told Michael what had happened, but he simply laughed and didn't pay much attention to it. Though, when I told him about the painting, he did feel curious. He wanted to know what it looked like, and so did I. I could barely see it the night before since the lady showed up before I got a closer look. All I knew was that it was a portrait of a woman, though it looked different to all the other portraits. It looked rather modern. When we had breakfast with the lady, I took my time to ask her some questions about last night, although now she had a new story. And the day before, she had told me there were no noises whatsoever, because it was a quiet, isolated area. And now she was telling me there were some cats that got on the roof every night. I asked her about the painting and why it was so valuable. She was nervous. I could tell her hands were shaking as she was drinking her coffee. She said it meant a lot to her because it was a painting of her mother, and I asked her if her mom had passed away, and she replied something unusual. Not necessarily. Before I could ask more questions, her cell phone rang. It was a call saying her day shift was cancelled, and she had to work during the night instead. She told Michael and I, and we said that there was no problem at all. Once we finished breakfast, Michael and I were going out for the day, but before we left, she wanted to give us some instructions since we were not going to see each other at night. She told us that we shouldn't worry about the sounds, for it was only innocent animals around. Then, she reminded us once again not to open or enter that one room. We already told her we wouldn't plenty of times, so the fact that she kept repeating it started becoming very intriguing. As Michael was going for our car keys, she said something that I didn't quite understand. Eva, sometimes you might think you hear something clearly, but it's not really that. So if you hear any noises at night, you ignore them, no matter how much they try to catch your attention. I did not understand what that meant, but we had to go, and I couldn't really ask her. And through the whole day, I didn't really pay much attention to our sightseeing destinations. All I could think about was the house and how everything about it was so random and mysterious. And so Michael and I got home about 11 p.m. We checked the house and, well, the lady was not home, just as we had been told. So I suggested we should check what was in that forbidden room, because I wanted to see the painting. And Michael, well, of course he wanted to see it too, but unfortunately, the door had been locked, so there was no way to get in. We were disappointed, but it was not a big deal, so we went back to our rooms. Now, at around 2 a.m, I was woken up by the same noises. However, this time, I woke Michael up, and he could also hear the noises, but we tried not to think about it since we were told it was the cats. However, as we were ready to go back to sleep, we clearly heard someone calling our names. We both looked at each other without knowing what to do, but then the voice called us again. Michael got up from the bed and said we should go see what it was because, well, it must be the lady. However, the lady's words were in my mind. Michael opened the door, and I was too afraid to stay alone, so I followed him. And everything in the hallway was dark once again, with the exception of the light coming from the forbidden room. And once again, the door was open. We stood there without knowing what to do. This is just like last night, I told to Michael. And Michael started to walk towards the room, and even though I was always curious, this time, I had a bad feeling about it. I kept telling him to stop, but the female voice kept calling us. Eventually, we entered the room, just to see the same things I saw the day before. There was nothing around but the lamp, the flowers, and the portrait. Once in the room, we called for the lady, but she wasn't around. We pointed out how weird it was. I told him I wanted to leave, but he said he wanted to check the painting first. The portrait was that of a lady around her 80s. The frame looked rather old, but the painting itself looked modern. The lady in the picture wasn't wearing a classic outfit. She was wearing something very normal. Michael and I were looking at the picture when all of a sudden, the eyes of the picture moved. I heard Michael scream, but I completely froze. Then, the picture was staring at us. Michael grabbed my arm while screaming we needed to leave. But at that moment, the door closed and the lamp turned off. We were desperate. We were screaming and kicked the door, trying to open it, and we could hear a voice in the room telling us to go away. I don't know for how long we were in the room. I think it was for less than 5 minutes, and then the door opened. The landlord was on the other side. Instead of questioning us for being in the room, she took us into the living room. She seemed very worried and asked what had happened. We were in shock. We could barely speak, and after a few minutes, I managed to pull myself together, and I told her what happened. She didn't seem surprised at all. In fact, she seemed sad. "I'm so sorry this happened to you. I did try to warn you this morning, but I guess it wasn't enough," she said. She went on to tell us the true story that, although it might sound fake and you might not believe me, I can corroborate that it's true. The person in the portrait is actually her mother. Someone a long time ago put a curse on her family. And ever since, whenever someone of her family dies, their body might vanish, but their soul gets trapped in the portrait, preventing the deceased to rest, at least until someone else of the family dies. Then that new soul would be the new trapped one. Because they are not able to rest, the spirits sometimes grow angry. However, there is nothing they can really do to harm you aside from scaring you a bit. After she explained that to us, the lady took us to the room and showed us the portrait once again. She spoke to the portrait, and the woman in it began to cry. The next day, Michael and I left to go back to Sweden. And I still remember her last words perfectly. "I'm not going to ask you not to tell anybody, because even if you do, they won't believe you." And she was right. Michael and I told this story to my mother and my sister, but they didn't believe us. To this day, it's hard for us to accept what we saw. But there was no way that lady faked what we saw in the forbidden room.